webinar. All right. So, welcome everyone to the very first Tiny Home Dwellers discussion hosted by tinyhouse.com. We really appreciate everyone for taking the time to attend and hope you get a lot out of this 1 hour session. I'm Jel, your moderator and your community manager at tinyhouse.com. This is my very first time moderating a panel discussion, so please bear with me as we go through this hour. All right, so this is how it's going to go. We'll start with a round of introductions, and then afterwards, I'll be asking each panelist a question. So panelists, if any of you want to add any insights after a question has been answered by another panelist, just go ahead and raise your hand and you'll have a chance to speak. And finally, we're going to end this session with a short Q&A. So audience, if you have any questions you want to raise, then go ahead and type it in the chat and let us know. So if that seems to work for everyone, I'd like for our panelists to show a thumbs up. Okay, awesome. All right, so hey, let's start with the round of introductions. Please tell us your name, your profession. If you have a company, your name, the name of your company, your location, and a very brief summary of your tiny home history, which includes the number of tiny homes you've lived in and the number of years that you've lived in each home. Okay, so let's start with Stacey.
Well, you're gonna have to break that down. There was like a a lot of information, but well, first of all, thank you so much, Jel. I really enjoy being here, and I'm loving my tiny mansion. So again, my name is Stacey Murphy. I actually am a relationship and life design coach, and the name of my business is the Vixen Academy. And what I primarily do is I really work with women, teaching them to be charismatic leaders during the day and enchanting lovers at night, so they can be in the driver's seat of their life. No pun intended with the tiny, right? So they can be in the driver's seat of their life. And so that is what I do. And my tiny mansion also is a big part of my business because I teach people what I call mystic design, which is using their home as a 3D vision board to produce love, passion, and prosperity. So that's why I say it's all tied in what I do, and my tiny mansion is all tied in what I do. I'm currently located in San Diego County here in California in a tiny park model in a tiny mansion community, a tiny house community here in San Diego County. So that, I think I hit all your questions, I believe.
Yes, Stacey, very, very well answered. Thank you. So let's move on now to Sami.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Sami Micelli. I am joining you from my tiny house, which at one point I did also call the tiny mansion, because she is on the more mid-high size of a tiny house. I'm currently in her studio, which stands for Healing, Educating, and Researching Earth Medicine, and I'm literally in the DJ booth, joining you from where a lot of the magic happens. So, my profession, I've been, chartered HR for a very long time. I had to pause that career in light of a traumatic, violent episode that injured my spine. So I've been on a healing quest ever since. And I dreamed up this tiny house. I literally just dreamed it. Yeah, I dreamt she had a music studio, and I do call her for various reasons I can share later. And sorry, what was the third question?
Oh, third question was, how long have you been living tiny, and how many tiny homes have you lived in, if you've lived in more than one?
Okay, so whatever we categorize as tiny, depending, right? So like I've lived in tiny homes because about 6 years ago, I was imagining a different lifestyle, like a lifestyle where I was like more in nature and I didn't have a lot. Like I didn't need everything that I had when I was in yuppie Vancouver. And so, to call it lightly. But yeah, so 6 years ago, 3 years ago, 3 years ago. 4 years ago, I dreamt of this house, and 3 years ago, it came to life. So I've been living in her studio on and off for 3 years, traveling and also, yeah, just like healing.
That's a great story, Sammy. We're curious to learn more about it as we go along. Thank you. How about you, Thomas? Can you tell us about yourself?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. My name is Sami Chappell. I'm here in Riverside, California. For those who are not sure, it's called the IE or the Inland Empire. I'm not originally from California. I'm originally from New York. I am a real estate investor. Also, I am a real estate lender. I have a real estate investment club that I do virtual right now. Every third Wednesday of the month. I'm on hiatus for the holidays. I also have a real estate radio show that's every fourth Sunday of the month. Um, my next show will be the 24th of this month. I think it's going to be retaping of a show I did prior before. I am also a business organizer. I just started a veteran-based business, which is for janitorial, carpet cleaning, maintenance, doing government contracts and things of that nature. And I have also about to embark on a real estate television show. And the last thing, I was a part of a tiny home community, actually building the tiny home. As I was an investor in the company. Now I'm in the verge of creating a tiny home community myself.
That was great, Thomas. Thank you so much. Everyone needs to tune into your radio show and your upcoming TV show.
Yes,
So you
thank
can
you.
plug that in later.
No problem.
Okay, awesome. So those are our three panelists for today. Why don't we go ahead and just get into it and start with our questions. All right, so the first question is for Stacey. Stacey, can you tell us why did you decide to start living in a tiny home, and did it exceed your expectations in all aspects? Why or why not?
Well, the funny story of how I even learned about the tiny industry was actually through my daughter. So I'm Gen X, and my daughter is Gen Z, or late millennial, and she's the one that planted, the tiny in my head back in 2018, and I was actually living in Florida when this is going on. I lived in Florida for a very long time. And in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I knew I needed to make a change. I knew I needed to make a pivot in my life. But that is when the tiny movement really was like, even though it was initially from my daughter who introduced it to me, I found out in 2020 that the lifestyle would be amazing for me. And that was also the strategy that I used to move from Florida over to California. Because especially everyone knows that California has expensive real estate, right? There is no pretending about that. And so I used the tiny industry as a way for me to afford property here in California. And it definitely has exceeded my expectations, but it has some bumps in the road. I know we're going to talk about that as time goes on, but it did have some bumps in the road. I had to fire my first builder. Yes, I had to fire my first builder, and the second builder is the house that I'm living in right now. I have a bigger size tiny. It's not a faux or a tiny house on wheels like the travel trailers. It's the next size bigger. Yes, it's still on wheels, but it's a park model. So that's why they call them tiny mansions, because they're a slightly bigger size than the travel trailers. But that's why I really got into the industry, or into the lifestyle. I'm a practical minimalist by heart, and I've owned several pieces of property. This is my fourth property that I've owned. However, this was a totally different lifestyle, totally different than owning any other property ever before. I've never learned so much about toilets and things of that nature in my life, or anything like that. Never learned so much in my life, but there's a huge learning curve that you have to go through. But it is, if you're very open to the experience, if you do your homework, you can turn it into a very fun and entertaining journey, but you will have bumps in the road. So it's not like what you see on TV, that you see on these decorating shows. Everyone's like, oh, it's so great, and da da da. You will have bumps in the road. Do I have any regrets? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's amazing. And this is one of the reasons why I'm here, taking questions from people so that wherever you are in your journey, I think just like Sami, I have been dreaming about this and it's taken years. So in 2020 is when I said, I'm going to get a tiny house for myself. I just got this in August of 2023. So it took like 3 years in order for me to get it. But that's how I got into it. It was actually from my daughter. And then I found out it was actually a great lifestyle for me. I'm self-employed. I work at home. So it's a real ideal situation.
Great. That's so cool to hear that your daughter had a great influence on your choice to go tiny. Does she live in a tiny house now as well?
Interestingly enough, no, she doesn't. Her and she got married. She got married last year, and she's traveling a lot. They live on the East Coast and things of that nature. And she was like, Mom, I'm really looking at tiny as we kind of get a little bit more into life and their marriage and all this other stuff. So I think she's going to be coming early next year, and she'll be in my tiny, and she'll be able to experience it for herself. So one never knows.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Stacy. That's awesome. It definitely goes to show that there are definitely, challenges ahead when it comes to living tiny, but I'm sure it's all worth it.
Yeah,
All
it
right.
definitely is. It definitely is.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to question number 2. This one is for Sami. Sami, can you tell us what were some of the main challenges of going tiny for you in your situation, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, challenges that I overcame. So for me, it happened very fast. I dreamt it and I communicated it with my parents. It was like my intellectual property. I was just like one day said, okay, I'm going to share this vision that I've been working with one of my healers who's helping me deal with obviously the trauma from the attack. And boy, before I know it, because the way that I pitched it to my mom, it was like, okay, we're gonna have Airbnbs, and then all I want in return is a tiny house. It was that simple. And it just happened. And all of a sudden, like, I was looking at companies to see which ones resonated with me. And there was a Canadian one called Mint Tiny Homes. And they're a builder. And this one, so basically, I went out to seek what they were doing. And they said to me, we have a couple options. You can either build one, or you can look at the ones that are pre-built. So I said, okay, let's look at options, because the way the whole manifestation happened really, really fast. We had to move fast because I was planning to come back to Canada. I was currently in Argentina at the time when all this was happening. So I then talked to the builder, and then I go to see the options, and I fell in love with this house. When I saw her, it was like, oh, that's a music studio. It just like out of this world. Oh my God, that's a music studio. Let's do this. That's it. We're doing it. And it was like, there was no question about it. There was no doubting it. There was just like rocket launch, tiny house living. And so the challenge was kind of like factors at play that contributed to the whole lifestyle. Okay, because I'm the first one in my entire family who risked her entire life to go and live with a much more eco-conscious mind, and it was taboo. So that was a challenge in itself, just pioneering it and making movements about it that could create questions for people, which is part of the process, I believe. And then the challenge then was obviously getting her here, and I didn't know where I was going to park her, but I had some ideas. I thought she was going to be parked in Squamish. And then when we manifested the property here on Vancouver Island, and the land, my dad suggested we park her here, and then it was like, oh, we're gonna be living in the same like lot. I haven't lived with my parents in like, I don't know how many, 20 years. Like, I've been very independent. I can, but if I can make it, I guess, as concise as possible, because there's just so much to share about tiny house living, and I think it's simple and complex at the same time, just because of the nature where society is today. But I think it's the challenge, mostly it's like lifestyle is knowing how to camp, I think, is a really great skill. And because for me, I had to learn all about water systems, electrical systems, things that I didn't even think about. What are cars, like what it's like having potentially a car to move her. Like, I just really nerded out on this stuff. And it's been nothing but a blessing ever since. Like, I just really, really enjoy it. And the reason why I am choosing to stick out the winter here is because I can't leave her again. I left her last year, and I want to make sure that she's taken care of, because this creation is just magnificent. I don't know what other way to explain it.
It's so encouraging to see someone's dream come to life when they talk about it. It's amazing. And I think it's also amazing how there's so many challenges, but just by getting the right information, just being able to find the right sources or other people to help you, you can always make it come true. So that you're a testament to that.
If I may add, I think it's like learning like toilets. I totally agree with Tracy. That's been like, what are we going to do about the toilet? And for me, I really like to have compost. My parents wanted to do the sewage system. We have a sewage system now, and I'm not sure I'm a fan, but it is what it is. That one of the challenges was like, how am I going to go to the washroom? And so I was using the washroom in the big house. So imagine having to like get up and go to the washroom in the morning. Not ideal, right? So those kind of things are just like kind of lifestyle things that you kind of, you see the beauty in it, and everything else you just figure out, because it is about living, getting in touch with nature. I think tiny lifestyle, whether it's a mansion or whether it's really, really tiny, it's about being aware of your consumption. And like, I had to so when I parked her at first, I had her like totally in the ghetto, in the I call it trailer chic. I've been living like a trailer chic lifestyle. So I've been having to like fill my house with water in the fresh water tank. And that was kind of cool, because it was like, whoa, and then it gets empty. What do I do now? I have to go fill it again. And it's in the middle of the night. You those cushy things that we did as colonials, it's like, not so much. So
Definitely an adjustment.
It's really rewarding though. I find it really rewarding, because I learned a ton about myself, and like how I connect with nature, with my my environment, and how my consumption impacts every day. If everyone did that, I think it would be like amazing. So yeah, I have the same vision. I want to live in like an eco park.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sami. All right, so the next question now is for Thomas. Thomas, can you tell us, if you're comfortable with sharing this, how much does your tiny home cost, or how much did it cost when you started? And how did you go about making financial decisions? And what do you think are the best tips for people who are currently looking to build or to buy their own tiny home now?
Well, at the moment, I'm not living in a tiny home. I partner up with some investors and partners that created building these units prefab. And the thing I would tell people is that understanding going tiny or prefab or ADUs or modulars or whatever you want to call them, this is the new age for them. You're going to get rid of the modern day stick builds, and you're going to go towards not have to worry about foreclosures or selling, because you can take your unit anywhere in this world you want to go. That's the most dynamic thing about going with the prefabs, because they're on chassis. You can hook them up to a standard size heavy SUV or pickup, and you can just go anywhere in the world. Matter of fact, you having a lot of people are transforming their conversion vans or cargo vans into living spaces and whatnot, just like um, the um, the what is it? Can't think of the name of the company right now, but their vans are turning into living spaces and whatnot. So I would simplify. Like I said, the one thing I am doing at this moment is building a community like a mobile home park. I'm having two sides of the park. And we did a community back in El Centro, California for a college student. They developed the land and we put the units on the land for college kids that wasn't able to afford to live on the dorm, live in the dorms or live outside the campus, that the school came and saw our homes at a fair and said, they would love for us to build them for us. So we built these units for them, 26 different size and 26 units for these kids to go to school. So you're looking at a compact living quarters that everybody's doing. You don't have a lot of people that are buying homes today anymore. Those days are gone. The world has changed in front of everybody's eyes, and a lot of people are not sure the direction they want to go. You have a lot of the newer generation that are doing e-commerce business. So some of them don't want to live in apartments because they don't want to be under rent control. Some of them move back home with their parents because they either can't afford or they just don't want to buy or live in an apartment. So going tiny is going to be, or prefab, it's going to be the new thing. And this is one of the reasons why here in California, uh, the whole world, the whole country's eyes is on California because the governor set a precedence by um, giving, you know, the cities, the local government, the ability to allow affordable housing. So when you're talking affordable housing, you're mostly talking, ADUs, prefabs. You could actually build these things in your backyard. You could turn your standard home into an ADU. You could add an ADU into your backyard. You could turn your garage into an ADU. You could build on top of your garage. Now you go from a single family to a fourplex, and you can make money off of that. So the biggest thing is that if you're going to do it, do it. Don't. I tell people Nike got the best slogan in the world. Just do it. Don't even think about it, because the more you think about it, you're gonna talk yourself out of it. You know what I'm saying? This is the new age of living, and with the, like I said, with the new generation that's doing the e-commerce business and that's becoming a big thing now, why not? You'll own your own property. You can take it anywhere in the world you want. You don't have to worry about if your job transfer you and you got to sell a home or you're about to get foreclosed on. You don't have to worry about none of that because it goes with you, you know. So, hey, that's the best thing I can tell somebody.
Thank you so much for your insights, Thomas. It's great to have someone like you on the panel to be able to talk about some of the more general issues or the general topics like you were just talking about. Um, Someone here actually has a question for you that I think we should already answer right now because it's a pretty interesting one. This person asked, how much land did it take to build 26 units?
That was about a half an acre, close to an acre. And basically, if you can put, it depends on how you want to set it up. If you want to have certain amenities, like if you go to a mobile home park, you can choose the type of amenities you want. You can just have the units, or well, let me back up a little bit. It depends on who you're targeting. If you're targeting, the family friendly, or you targeting the older generation, who are you targeting? And then once you find out who you're targeting, now you have to look at what type of amenities you want, because you want them to come to your location. You got to give them a reason to want to come to your location. If you just put a bunch of homes out there, really, why do I want to come live there? Why do I want to actually own a home there? Because see, there's some RV parks that are here in Hemet, California. Now, the way these RV parks are set up is an RV or anything you might consider an RV or a tiny home. And then they have the homes, the tiny homes, but they call them cottages. Now, the way they have it set up is that you could only stay there for 6 months at a time. Then you have to leave for a couple of days and then you come back and stay another 6 months. But the amenities that they have is pools, a rec center, the laundry mats and all these different type of things. So the first thing you want to do is find out who you're targeting, who's going to be the primary people you're marketing to. And then once you find that out, then the next step would be is basically what do you want to what type of amenities you want to give that person to want to stay. They can park their unit there and you just pick up the space rent. You know what I'm saying? So it just really depends. What we did is that 26 units was connected together, even though they were separate individual units that housed two people. The fact of the matter is they were separate individuals and had a second lot that was a parking lot. So it wasn't the parking lot was adjacent to the unit. The parking lot was adjacent from the unit. So just like at an RV park, your vehicle is parked next to your unit. You can do it that way, or you can have a separate parking lot. Now, like I said, once again, who you're targeting. If it's raining, if it's cold, and you got to walk to your vehicle, do you want people to do that? Do you want to make it accessible for them? So you have to know who you're targeting first.
Okay, that's great insight. Thomas, I think Sammy wanted to add something onto that.
Well, yeah, sorry. There's a couple of questions, and I'm reading the chat because I'm a moderator too, so I naturally just go to moderating.
Go ahead.
I see that Steve said he's part of the panel. He says he wants to be part of the panel.
Yes, so Steve, I've already talked to Steve via email.
Okay.
So Steve couldn't join us just right now. I think we had some kind of miscommunication, but we have
Oh,
another panel coming up in January. So we have a lot of time to have him on panel next year.
awesome.
All right.
I'm really intrigued to hear about the eco parks and how that's coming along. My project Speakeasies.Earth is all about that. So what we're doing with Speakeasies is sourcing regenerative material, regenerative science. So what we're looking to do is partner with as many companies that are looking and thinking this way. Even cars, because of course, mobile homes, tiny homes in mobile homes, RVs, that's like a lifestyle in itself, but of course, you're on the road a lot, you're going to be burning a lot of fuel. So there was a question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to take over, Jel. You go ahead. But there was another question I think that someone wanted answered about zoning bylaws and things like that.
I see. Okay. Maybe we can try and save it for the last 10 minutes. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, because zoning is it's a big question, or it's a bigger issue. It also depends on where you're living. So depending on where you live, and I know Sammy, you're in Canada, but like in the US, depending on where you live, the zonings are totally different. So
That's true.
that may be a complicated question for this. I'm a little bit more familiar with California. I don't know about the other places, but yeah, that's like a big question probably for
Yeah.
a separate meeting and stuff
I
like
agree with
that.
you, Stacey. I think we can also, it's great because we can see what topics are in demand and then we can set up more events in the future for those particular topics. So thank you for suggesting that. We still have a bunch of questions I want to ask you guys. For example, Stacey, can you tell us, after living tiny for so long, what would you say are the most essential tiny home features?
Well, I've only been living in my tiny house for
Oh
a
yeah,
couple of months, but
right.
I do feel one of the things I did before moving into my tiny to make sure that the lifestyle was work for me for like 1 month, I did like a tiny tour where for 1 month I stayed in 4 different types of tinies for a week each in totally different setups. So I did a tiny in a community. I did a tiny in a backyard. I did a small tiny. I did a 10-foot wide tiny, which are slightly bigger. And that is definitely something I recommend that everybody do before they even put down any kind of money, before they even talk to anyone, is just to actually see, does this lifestyle even work for you? Can you even maneuver yourself in a tiny? And when I did that, that's when I found out I need the bigger tiny, not the little tiny. And I found that out. And I also found out the little quirks, but design is essential when you are building your tiny. And also it depends on, are you going to be building your tiny from scratch, or are you going to be buying it from someone else? Right. And so, because there's a difference there as well. I went the route where I had mine built because I wanted specific things in my house, like an office. I wanted a meditation area in my tiny. So those two are up in my loft. And also for the design, I'm in my mid 50s, right? So I future proofed my house. What that means is my bedroom is downstairs. I'm not going to be climbing up a ladder to get in my bed in my 60s. Okay. So it's so, you got to think about those things when you are actually, building your tiny. And then I would also say, what are those must-haves in your space? And you need to prioritize, because, and also prepare yourself to downsize. So, like, for example, if you're living in a 2,000 square foot house and you want to go down to 550, which is what mine is, my house is 400 square feet on the first level, and then my loft is bonus space, which they don't count towards square footage legally, right? And I park my house legally. I'm actually in a manufactured house community, and here in California. And that's how a lot of tiny communities become legal fast, is they buy up an RV or a manufactured home community because the infrastructure is already there. And that literally is what happened with the property that I'm in. It was converted over to be tiny. So when I got here, that's when you're living in it, then you kind of determine what is necessary and what's not necessary in your space. And you'll find that out once you kind of start living in it. But what is really critical is, what are your must-haves? Start downsizing your life now, so that you can know what you put in your house is what you love. And that's what's very, very important, because you're not going to have a lot of space to have all this extraneous stuff. Because I've been in some people's tinies that look like they can be on hoarders and things of that nature. So you got to downsize. And I think one other thing that isn't talked about, which is important, if you have a tiny or a tiny mansion or whatever, is you do need a shed.
Shed.
You do
Okay.
need a shed, okay? And I have my she shed outside. It matches my house. You do need a shed because that's your garage. And so this is where it's kind of like, you got to be realistic about certain things. You need to downsize, but and then design it in a way that is going, like I said, that's going to work for you. If you have animals, you need to make sure you have that in the design of what you're going to do with your pets. If you have a lot of instruments and you're a musician, what are you going to do with that, right? So you need to think about those things when you're doing your design, because doing it after the fact is not going to be as easy. That's there. So you got to think about it ahead of time. Those big things, those really big things that are important, and then those other things that kind of be like are nice to haves or things like that, then you can worry about those later. And so that's like one of the big things I would talk about. What's important with tiny living is just really getting what's important to you, how you want to set up your home, so that when you're living in it, you're not going like, darn, I wish I had done this, or why didn't I think of that? And visiting and staying in some tinies before you invest and jump into the lifestyle is also one thing I definitely recommend. I found all these tinies on Airbnb. So that's that's how I did it, and it was a great and very informative experience, to say the least.
Great. Those were some really great tips, Stacey. Thank you. Um, Yeah, so something you mentioned that I want to highlight again is the fact that if you haven't ever experienced tiny home living in any way, short-term rentals are there for you to rent out for a few days or weeks or so to see if you really like the lifestyle and see yourself doing it. So it's a great tip. Thank you. Let's go on to Sami. Sami, we have a question for you. So let me just get my note. There we go. So, Sammy, did you experience any legal related problems or challenges before owning your tiny home, and how did you deal with them?
No, I haven't had any legal issues, and I live in a small town. So one of the things that was recommended is that I speak to the local town, and didn't have to because my parents took care of, basically it was just, we had to turn it into like an RV corner in a way, like treat it like as if an RV. So we had to provide full service for the house. And so that's why they installed the sewage system, and that made it legal per se. Is it the best system? No. That's the problem I have, is that just because it's legal doesn't make it the best. So it is what it is. We're working with what we have. For me it was spontaneous, and I think I don't know that I would give the same advice, Stacey, sorry. But for me it was like, I'm gonna try this thing, this is fucking awesome, I love it. Oh, sorry. We're live here, but it just worked for me. I think maybe because it was a manifestation, I didn't do that much research. I just knew that it was like part of my destiny, as you could say. No pun intended on the Destinos, but that is what my mom's company represents. And medical tourism was where I was when I was manifesting it. I was manifesting my home because I was traveling and I was living in many Airbnbs that I was not happy with. And but now I'm an Airbnb host leader for Sunshine Coast. So, I get to be part of the change that I think would be a better licensing system, or a better way to, because at the end of the day, like why we have this legal system right now is to generate taxes. So that's supposed to feed into the system that we live in. That's where tiny house lifestyle is really all about. I think it comes from an innate want and need to be more regenerative by nature. So for me it just worked out that way. That is like more of like a sovereign need to have a home, and that's why some of the conversations we're having locally, and that advocates are working hard with government current system here to recognize that the housing crisis in Canada, we have a housing crisis. Rest of the world, anybody else want to share what's going on in their backyard? But it's not about Airbnb short-term rentals at all. It's about economic worth and being able to find well-paying jobs, or doing work that is regenerative by nature. So it's like I'm growing food for someone gets to eat because I'm a farmer, like at that source. That's why I connect so much with the farmers. And so there's an opportunity to house, like here we have a major problem down just in the town where people are living on the streets, and that's unacceptable. And we're like right at the thick of winter. So there's a significant opportunity to start looking at tiny house living like this is the future and this is the present, and it's going to happen, and it needs to happen because it could solve a lot of problems, and it could save a lot of lives. People living on the street, I don't think that anyone deserves to live like that. So, and we can help a lot. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sammy. I want to backtrack on something you said. And you said that in order to make your tiny home legal, you had to go with a sewage system. So did you have to, if for instance you wanted to go with a compost toilet, were there legal steps you had to take in order to make that legal, or it's absolutely illegal?
no, nothing happened other than my dad talked to the town, and the town said you just have to do this in order for it to be legal, and then he did it, and he paid money to do it. It was that simple. In a small town, I don't think they're going to waste a lot of time on this kind of stuff. We have RVs everywhere, and it's not a house that bothers anyone, but I have considered moving it, and I am looking at farms potentially. So that's always an option, but it doesn't bother anyone because we're in the middle of nowhere here in Vancouver Island. So
All right, yeah, that makes sense. I think it's definitely important that everyone check with their local government on what the legal steps are into really establishing your tiny home, because it can be different to compared to other towns and other cities. So
Yeah, but
that's
you got to
definitely
keep
one
in
tip
mind.
to take.
Sorry, I would say I keep in mind that there's RV parks everywhere, right? So, and people are driving like RVs from places. So I think maybe asking for permission is not my advice. My advice is learn to live in it first, see if you like it, check where you live, but you know, you're not you I don't know, I don't think it's that needs to be that strict. I wouldn't agree it being that strict because it needs to be lifestyle. It needs to be people need homes. Like for us, it's people need homes. We have to stop. Like, what do you want to hire someone to have a whole licensing system for all these homeless people? Just give them homes, man. All I need is homes. Like we're wasting our time, I think, with paperwork and taxes and et cetera, et cetera. We have real problems to solve.
Definitely. Can't agree with you more. All right. So next question we have is for Thomas. So Thomas, since you are working in real estate, I'm trying to find a suitable question for you. Could you tell us more about what is the process of building the tiny home? Can you tell us like how long does it take to build a 400 square meter tiny home, and what are the certain tips that you have for people who are going to build their home instead of buy them?
Well, the thing of it is that you got to understand there's only very few states have adopted the ADU lifestyle. They transition from saying tiny to ADUs now because it seems more accessible for government to okay it, if you will. So there's
Oh,
only
for
very
those
few states.
who aren't aware of what ADUs are, could you define that before moving on?
Okay, no problem. It is accessory dwelling unit. That's basically what it means. So they used to call them back in the day granny flats, or mother-in-law houses and whatnot. But that's where the government is able to adopt the tiny home community by calling them ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And basically, um, every state or every country has not caught on to it yet. Only very few states are doing it right now. So the model, just like here in California, is that it's legal no matter what. What city you go to is legal. There's nothing they can do to stop it. The only problem is that how can they incorporate it so every department can make money off of it? That's basically what they're looking at, because you got to get the permits and the licenses and things like that, which is easy. And also now here in California, they passed a law to get funding to help you build these things, whether it's a stick build or whether it's a modular home. Because now not only are you talking about prefab homes, the biggest thing that they're doing now is taking shipping containers and turning them into homes as well. Um, Los Angeles did a big problem when they made the shipping containers homes for the homeless and put it on the parking lot of Venice Beach. That didn't work out because they just threw a little bit of money to and say, here's a place to live. It didn't have its own um, washroom in there. Everybody had to go to an outhouse or one of those portables to go use the restroom and things like that. So it's not something that they're on board with, but it's something that they can't deny you from doing. So the bottom line of it is you just got to understand your state legislature and figure out what it is that they're looking at as far as legalizing anything you do, So that's the one thing you have to look at. So, like I said, by me being here in California with real estate, um, it's the easiest thing to jump on because it's less cost effective. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't take a lot, and you can add to your existing unit or you can put an existing unit in your backyard as long as the lot is able to support, or you can turn your garage into a unit, or you can build on top of your garage. And like I said, now you went from a single family to a fourplex, and you could either have family members live in it or you could rent those out. Because back in the day, we used to have those and we called them border houses where people rented out rooms and whatnot. Calling them, um, now they calling them um, what is it? I can't think of the name right now. I just lost the blank. um,
Um,
Airbnbs. Now they call them Airbnbs now. So a lot of people now are renting an Airbnb, not the entire house, just a room. You know what I'm saying? Because like I said, they're getting tired of the restriction when it comes to apartments. They always raising the rents up, and you got to deal with them not fixing everything, and you paying rent on time and things like that. And then also you're looking at your homes at a lot of these senior citizens, baby bloomers own their homes. They can't sell them for fair market value because they're old. They need to fix up. They don't fix income, so either they keep them as rentals or they're still living in it, and their grown children come back home with grown children. So you have a powder keg, if you will, on how you want to do things. You got to figure out, like a lot of people saying, what's the best strategy for you. You know, it sounds like it's something to do, but are you able to put a 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom into a smaller space? Can you live like that? Or saying that I got way too much stuff that I don't need, that everybody sticks in their garage. You know what I'm saying? So this is another way that you can capitalize and make money off of, whether you live in it or you rent them out or whatever you want to call it. So that's the big thing. That's one reason why I got into it, because not only they less cost effective, they are more affordable, and you can also you capitalize and make money off of it.
hey, thank you so much, Thomas. That was very interesting. I haven't heard that perspective in a while, and that was very interesting. I think there's a lot of people who will appreciate that, especially for those who need or want to make income out of their tiny home. We also have some resources about that if you're interested in learning more about that. So let me know if you're looking to do that. We have some questions from our audience here that I was hoping we could start answering. Maybe we can have Stacey answer the first one. Stacey, do you have any advice on how to approach conversations or any strategies for finding suitable places to park a tiny home in a less than friendly area?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because I was an unintentional digital nomad for about 18 months because I was trying to figure out where to park my house, where I wanted to park my house. Um, and how I went about doing it was one, I was in Facebook groups in the area that I was interested in, and I also took a tiny course. So there were other classmates that were in this course, and that actually is how I was also able to find this community. I went to several different tiny communities that they actually do have in San Diego County. And like I said earlier, how they were able to do that, these were like either old RV parks or manufactured home parks, which they converted over. And it takes about 2 to 3 years. So it was from doing that and learning about one, and then they told me about another community. I also contacted RV parks here. And this is something that a lot of people should know is even though it is legal for a tiny house to park in an RV park, whether it's short term or long term, you may find there are a lot of RV parks that won't allow you to park there. And that is a big surprise. Like people get surprised when they find that out. So this is something that you just need to be aware of. Some are open, but a lot, others are not. But communities that they're no longer calling them mobile home, they're manufactured homes, they are the ones that are more open to tiny houses. So I literally would tell people, don't look at an RV park, actually look at a manufactured home park instead, because they're more open to it and it may be easier for you. The other thing is driving around in different areas. If you know other people that do have tinies in the area that you're in, also talk with them and see what they had to do. And also, it depends on, do you want to be closer into the city or do you want to be further out? Because that also is a determining factor of one, where can you find to locate, how big your lot size as well. There are tiny communities in San Diego County that are close into the city. However, they're like this next to each other. I mean, you literally can throw a stone and you hit your neighbor's window. But where I live, it's a lot of space. I have a big size lot. So you also have to look at what are some of those things there. But that would be my advice when you're looking. It's go on Facebook groups, especially tiny groups, right? Do that. Go on, like, with tinyhouse.com, they have the university and the resources that are there. Do that as well. And I'm also a member of Tiny House Industry Association. So it's just called THEA. And if you're not, it's a nonprofit, and they have a lot of resources on their website, including communities as well. And so doing all the, and then YouTube. that was the other resource that I used to also look at what are some of the communities, things of that nature. So I would definitely recommend THEA. Again, that's Tiny House Industry Association, because they have on there like a list of tiny house communities nationwide, because they're a nation nonprofit. That's for the tiny industry. So I would do that, Facebook, YouTube, and talk with other people, like how did they find. So I'm sharing with you, this is how I found the community that I was in. So it was a couple of different resources. And go to the tiny expos, that you get a lot of information as well. Go to the tiny expos that may be in your state or your city, and see what's available there, because there's a lot of resources and information also.
Perfect. Thank you so
So
much,
hopefully that answered
Stacey.
the question.
Yes, it definitely does answer the question. But I do see some people saying that, for example, in Texas, there are a lot of RV parks that are allowing people to park their tiny homes in, and that's, I guess, when you compare it to other states, like you said, in California, it's a little bit more difficult in California. So it really depends which state you're in. Let's see. Is there any other question here? Okay, we have one for Thomas. What is the difference between an ADU and a park model?
There's really no difference. It's just the name itself, because ADU can be a model or tiny home or a stick build. So they're one and the same. Basically, it's just a smaller dwelling unit. It's not uh, like here in California. I can't speak on other states because I'm not there. Um, the highest you can go as far as ADU would be 1,200 square feet. So if you have a 2,000 square foot house or 25 or 3,000, then you cannot build another unit bigger than that. It's got to be 1,200 or less. That's what they consider tiny homes. You know what I'm saying? A smaller space, and some people have a problem thinking it's going to be like 400 square feet or 300 square feet. And how can you maneuver around? Like Stacey was saying, and like the other young lady was saying, customize the unit to what you want. You got to have it a makeup of you. This is what you're going to live in, so it has to be what you eliminate to put out there, that this says this is my home. Um, like she was saying, I was going to say, if she didn't say it, go to a lot of these conventions, and talk to the people that create these units and find out places where you can be able to park. My best suggestion for somebody is, why don't you just buy your own land, put your unit on there, and then you charge other people to bring their units there, and you capitalize and make money off of it. You see what I'm saying? Strategize, be a capitalist. I'm one. So
And that,
Looks like
but
Stacey has something to say.
but that also depends on what state, because like in California, you
exactly.
can't, right? Because like in California, you can't do that. You can't buy your own land and put your own tiny,
Yes, you
on that
can.
land.
Yes, you can. And matter of fact,
Uh,
and then not to be disrespectful, my community that I'm doing it under a nonprofit, which makes it easier for me.
well, okay, then you're doing nonprofit. So, because I
Yes.
know I'm on an advocacy group, and they know they've been trying different things. It's in our area, you have to have a primary house on the
Do me a
land.
favor. Do me a favor. Look
Mhm.
up on YouTube Ryan O'Connell. Since you're in California, he's up north. Go to YouTube's, look up Ryan O'Connell, Oconnell on YouTube's. He is the guru when it comes to the state laws for ADUs. He's the guru. Matter of fact, I had him on my real estate radio show last August, and he tells people what the law here is because he's up north in Sacramento, so he's up that way. So he gets first hands on of what's coming down the pipeline for the state of California. Go look up Ryan O'Connell, or you can go to Real Men of Real Estate, hosted by me, Thomas F. Chappell Jr. And you can see me on YouTube, Roku, Amazon Stick, Apple Television, and you can see all my episodes. But Ryan O'Connell in California tells you exactly what the laws are for California, and that's as well as San Diego.
Hey, very good advice. Thank you, Thomas. How about Sammy? You raised your hand.
Yes. There's some discussions taking place in the chat about asking for permission and the consequences with not following legal. So in Canada, we have a much more sovereign view on things where the land is not ours, it's borrowed. We're borrowing it from the Indigenous families. So as long as you have permission from the Indigenous families and they're willing to work with you, that's also my view. But that's where how a lot of us sit here. The governments are trying to find reconciliation with that vision. So the consequences are we gotta fight for a right to party. I don't know, like I want to have a party in my tiny house. I don't want any issues. I want to bring music, right? And music is healing. So that I'm on a healing journey. And if there's something that's getting in the way of that, that's impeding my ability to exist as a sovereign person on this planet. And that's the view of the Indigenous families as well. So
I think sorry, go ahead.
no, that was it. Thank you. Go ahead,
Okay,
John.
great. Awesome. So yeah, which area you in again, Sammy, in Canada?
I'm in Canada. I'm in BC, British Columbia.
Okay, that's good to know, because I think maybe if someone is looking to move to a place where it's a bit easier, more lenient to build and buy a tiny home and live in, I think that's one of the places that we could actually recommend and suggest.
Yeah, I wouldn't look at it as lenient. I would look at it as responsible and look at like you're part of a cause. You're part of a movement to give people homes and to have a right to have a shelter, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, phase 1. So that's key. But yeah, it's just Canada has its issues. There's a lot of things happening legally, illegally, and the government does corrupt things. My physical attack happened because of a corrupt system. My spine was injured because of a corrupt system, and I didn't even realize what was happening in my backyard this whole time.
Right.
So
this reminds me a lot of Jay Schaefer. Jay Schaefer gives a good talk about government systems and how they're impacting the tiny home industry. That's something we have actually on the community, but it might be interesting to those of you who want to learn more about what's the red tape like and where does it stop, where does it end, and things like that. So
exactly,
that might be
like I
interesting
think
for
it's
you guys.
knowing. I'm learning from politicians how to politique myself, right? Because like leadership, what we need are leadership to step up and say, hey, there's opportunity here to have a better earth together without fighting all the time. So how can we do that?
Definitely, yeah. That's a great topic that we can all really contribute to, I think. And there's actually another one here for you, Thomas, if you don't mind answering this one. But it says here, what can you easily transport ADUs if you need to move for work, for example?
Well, it really depends. I mean, like I said, it's hard for me to expound on it because every state is different, and I only know about here in California. And California is still, because I work alongside with a lot of city officials, I start to get close to a lot of city officials because I need to help solve that problem. You see what I'm saying? So I'm talking to mayors and whatnot on finding out how can I help solve that problem. Well, the biggest thing of it is that in order for me to do that, then I have to be a volunteer on either Parks and Recs or the planning committee. Now, if I get on the planning committee, then I can understand what it is that they're doing and what they're seeking, because they all saying the same thing. We want to have affordable housing. We want to take care of the homeless and yada, yada, yada. But a lot of people don't truly understand that it was never government's position to create jobs or housing. It's up to us. And we create the jobs, we create the housing, and then there won't be any issues. We all look for our career politicians to do that for us when it's not their job. So the fact remains is that if we come to them with a solution to their problem, they'll be more than happy to do it, because now they don't have to, and they can take the shine for it. Take the shine, go ahead, I don't care. But I'm creating an opportunity that everyone can thrive from. So the only thing I can say is that, once again, you have to know what your city and local governments understand. The one thing I'm going to tell you right now: understand your legislature. That is the key component, is understanding what your legislature have. So now you are more equipped. So when you go back and say, okay, legislature say we can do this, but you're telling me we can't. I can do, because now you have the leverage to be able to show these folks and help them in their career. I got one mayor that's going for re-election next year, and he is a counselor by trade. But how I got started on what I'm getting ready to do is that he says that he counsels some foster kids. Some he knew what happened to him, and some he didn't. So the light bulb came on. So now I told him what I'm doing. I said, this will help your reelection campaign. He's on board. He's put me in front of his colleagues, in front of the council, to give them exactly what I'm doing. And all they got to do is let me get the land. I don't need to buy the land. Just let me get the land. And the owner of the land can continue to receive the proceeds. Now, since I am going through nonprofit, which means I can get all my funding from HUD, because that's where all that's coming from. And the other biggest thing is, you got to be able to find out what these folks need to serve. I'm here to serve, to help, not be a nuisance. I want to help. So using this platform that I have, creating the opportunity to give houses to those who cannot afford it anymore. California and New York is the richest states in the world that it's incredible to live. You know what I'm saying? You talking about houses in the rural area and the ghetto, the hood. They over houses in LA over $1 million, and they not even worth $1 million. You see what I'm saying? So we have to solve that problem. And the only way you can solve that problem is that you got to get with your local officials and find out how can you help and serve, so that way you can get what you want.
Well said.
I agree with you, Thomas. Well, yeah, exactly. Well said. Tiny house movement has been going on for years, but there's still so much work to be done. So thank you so much, Thomas, for encouraging us to do that. We are supposed to wrap up already because we're a bit over time, but I wanted to ask one very last question. You panelists have been great, and actually I'm thinking of having you guys again for next year if you guys would still want to. I would love to hear one last thing before we end. What is your number one tip for those who want to start living tiny? Your one tip, that one tip that will really get them to say, I'm ready to go tiny. We'll start with Stacey.
Educate yourself. Do research on, like everything I've been sharing here. It's important to do your research. I know Sami is like, jump in there, and I'm like I'm like the exact opposite. I'm like, do your research, because I've seen a lot of people jump into it and they quickly jump out because they didn't know what they were doing or what they were getting themselves into. So I would definitely say, educate yourself, take your time. And if you find out that the lifestyle is for you, then have fun. right? Go and do a tiny, like I did a tiny tales, do a tour, stay in several tinies, live in them like you were going to be living in it every single day and not like a tourist. Okay. Cause like one tiny, I had to have my suitcase in my car because it was too small and I couldn't even fit my suitcase. So things of that nature, I would just say explore it, research it. Don't be like, oh, look at how it is on YouTube, because YouTube and all those things, they're trying to make money. They're wanting to sell you, the bells and the whistles. But when you come in reality of it, do your research, because once you do that and you find out that, you know what, I can actually do this, then you'll find out when you're actually living in the lifestyle, you'll do great. Then you'll do great, and you won't have to be going through all these shenanigans after the fact, because it can cost you a lot of money if you find out afterwards it's not the lifestyle for you. So that is what I would that's what I would recommend. Do you get some education first and then have a good time.
Awesome. Yes, have fun, definitely an important tip. How about you, Sami? What's your tip?
Okay, my tip. Learn to live small. Learn to prioritize your real estate. Be conscious of like how much water you use. Yeah, be conscious of how much water you use, your consumption with electricity. I am on the grid at the moment, but I would highly recommend doing an off the grid and learning to live with what you have and learning to hunt for what you need. Definitely get to know your builder. That was something I didn't highlight, but I have a lukewarm experience with the builder, so that's important. That would be, if I had more time, I would have done a little bit more research on the builder and I would have shopped a little bit more. But I love the house. Like the house itself is a really good build, and she has a mind of her own, kind of have its own personality. So yeah, and then learn to work with your local government to influence change in your direction, like Tom is doing. Partner with farmers. I mean, that's basically my objective, is to partner with farms and find as many places where we can have tiny houses. And have fun always. It's a really fun ride. I think it's I wouldn't give it up for the world. I'm so grateful that it brought me here and to this experience too. I didn't imagine coming out in public like this. I'm really hoping to influence my parents. So maybe it will be a tiny world after all.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sami, for
Oh,
coming
and
out
come to
here
our
and giving
Spanglish
us your
Cafe.
time.
Sorry, one more time. Last piece of advice. Come to our Spanglish Cafe on Vancouver Island. We'll serve coffee and tea. We have a coffee shop here, community.
That sounds lovely. Thank you, Sami.
Thank
And
you.
finally, Thomas, your tip?
Well, my tip is find out what your niche is. It's as easy, because let's say you have a 4 bedroom, 2 bath, 3 bath, 4-2, 3-2, whatever the case may be, and you have children. Once your children grow up and they move out, eventually you're going to want to downsize. You don't need that bigger house anymore. So the question is that when you downsize, are you downsizing uh, with less or still more? Because everybody thinks that everything they have in their homes they need, and researching and downsizing is a different scenario, because everybody wants to keep everything they have. Can you live without certain things, and living in a small space, whether it's a 300 square foot space or a 1,000 square feet, or nine or eight, would that be feasible enough for you? You know what I'm saying? So the best thing you can do is go to these different trade shows that they have across the world. And another thing that we did not talk about is glamping tents. A lot of people are glamping now. I just found out what the hell glamping is. It's a big, huge tent, and they have the convention every October, once again October in Colorado, where they can take their whole home and convert it into a large tent. So That's another way people are living now is in glamping. So there's a lot of ways that you can be able to live comfortably in a small environment. Is that if that's what you choose to do, then you also got to look at, okay, figuratively, dollar wise, is it more convenient for you to keep more money in your pocket or continue to spend more money on the property that you have now and then have to worry about getting foreclosed or whatever the case may be, or moving because you want to move closer to the grandkids when you can take your unit with you? So it's just the way you have to look at things and just find out what your niche is. And from that, now you can know where you want to go.
Okay, great advice, Thomas. Thank you so much. So to our panelists, you've been incredible. You've been giving us so much insight, especially about tiny home living and especially about even the legal stuff and other topics. We've explored so much in just an hour and 20 minutes. And I can see already that we have so much positive feedback on the chat. So thank you very much for contributing your time. And to our audience, so we have Stacey, Sami, and Thomas's information on the event page. So you can go visit their websites and learn more about them and see if you want to work with them and anything, just chat them up. If you have other questions, please send us an email to info@tinyhouse.com. We're going to be having more panel discussions next year, so please watch out for those. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's been great, and we'll see you at the next one. All right, bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Adios.
Thank you.